Good people, have you ever seen a color this awesome? This is the Chroma Flair from a new brand, APNX, which stands for Weirdly Advanced Performance Nexus. This is their C1 enclosure, and right off the bat, the purple and blue shimmering, the beautiful texture inside the metal, and depending on the angle of the light and your viewing angle also, the color changes, which is absolutely mind-blowing. This is so awesome. Of course, there's tempered glass on the side, but I really love the wraparound from the front panel towards the rear of the enclosure. And this is where things get interesting with this particular build, because I want to do an anti-RGB build inside this enclosure and have the color of the case be the showcase, but with a little extra flair. So I decided to paint some components that I could remove from the case with this complementary brass color, and I think it turned out awesome. Some imperfections here and there, but whatever. You guys know how much I love wood on the exterior to really showcase the enclosure, to be more elegant, but here, you know, it's a little out there, but it's still very elegant and it's different. I love a beautiful gradient, and they've done such a good job on those two colors. So you go from light blue to light purple and purple. Absolutely gorgeous. And for my brass elements, I took everything that was removable from the interior. So the front section of the power supply shroud, the cable bar, the top fan bracket, and the rear storage bracket slash fan bracket. The PCIe slots came out because of my vertical setup. So with all the removable parts dried and painted, it was time to take off the fans and mount everything black in here for my anti-RGB build. So basically go for blackout hardware with orange accents on the RGB to complement the brass, and I think it turned out really good. It is really unfortunate though that APNX did not continue with this beautiful Chroma Flair finish onto the interior, but taking things into your own hands, of course, is always an option. But I really hope that this is like a guiding light for more brands to experiment with interior colors as well, because so much of the modern hardware is already black or neutral, and so it would be kind of easy to color match to a really unique color case. Yeah, no. The most impressive thing for me with this enclosure is the support for motherboards with the backwards facing connectors. I mean, if that's the future we're going to, the C1 is going to be future-proof in that sense, because of course it supports your standard ATX motherboards, you know, traditional sense with the cables facing you on the left side, but with a motherboard like this Aorus, for example, the connectors are all facing the back of the enclosure, and that really opens up a really unique experimentation of like, how clean can you make the back instead of the front? Because this is the motherboard connected, fully ready to power on, you know, ignore the PCIe cables, but look how clean that looks. It's absolutely awesome. This is first of its kind, of course, and experimenting with different cable management techniques is going to be really important, and I feel like motherboard vendors and case manufacturers are going to have to talk together about what that means for the future of cable management. But like 5 minutes in and 10 zip ties later, the whole system looks super clean. My only hesitation with backwards facing motherboard connectors is that we have to rethink how we approach cable management on the frame side, because now we have all this concentration of connectors facing the back, you know, in a traditional sense where you have bulk of the cables. But, you know, these guys are not a problem. The top connector is not a problem. Now you just don't have to go around the motherboard. So the main advantage with this type of motherboard is the other side. Because ignoring the GPU cables, this motherboard is ready to go. We have power, the 24-pin, the 8-pin, all the I/O is connected. And this is awesome. Looks super clean and really, really stealth. I guess that makes sense. The motherboard is called Elite Stealth. Also, the guys mentioned the placement of this Q flash button is a little strange because, for example, it might be covered with cables, or in this example, if I mount this 4-pin connector, and if I'm mounting it with my right hand, I could easily depress this Q flash button accidentally when working with that 4-pin right beside it. So that's a little something that has to be worked out when it comes to backwards facing motherboard connectors. You know, everything that's kind of open is fine here, but like all this stuff with the fan connectors would be perfect here, so it's not being kind of choked by all that space. These motherboards are also likely to be more expensive than traditional ones, but at the cost of convenience, because if you have to route HD audio cables, any fan connectors. You don't have to remove the GPU. Everything is facing the back, so it's already immediately in your vicinity when it comes to cable management, and it's all right there. The biggest advantage with this motherboard design is the cleanliness on the interior where your hardware is, so there are no cables getting routed from behind the motherboard tray, no curvature of the 8-pin, and so that poses a question, what's going to happen with all the custom cables? But at least finally something totally innovative on the motherboard and case side at the same time. And speaking of good design, let's hear a message from today's video sponsor. Good people, you know Antlion for their incredible microphones and versatility of the Mod Mic series. And now you can explore a whole new world of IMs with their new Kimura lineup with a proper low profile, sounding excellent microphone. They work with almost any MMCX and 2-pin connectors, so you can utilize the microphone on your favorite IEM, but the pre-built combos of the Solo and Duo are a great introduction to detailed audio and sweet soundstage plus this clear microphone. These are still in my audio rotation when I don't want headphone hair or a giant mic in my face, so check them out below. Now, a few pointers about the build quality. You know how in most steel cases, the top fan bracket is very flimsy and bends easily? On a C1, that is not the case. You can lift the entire case by that one thin sheet piece of metal and it does not bend, like wow. All the edges, including the curve, are nice and smooth, no dangerous imperfections here. All the side panels are toolless with nice solid click in. And I have tried to find imperfections in the stamped square ventilation mesh at the front and the sides. I couldn't. Although unfortunately the ventilation mesh pattern is not consistent, so it's different on the exterior versus interior. As you can see, the interior is quite open, so really long GPUs are supported. You can do vertical GPUs with an optional bracket as well. Also notice there's a GPU support bracket with some vertical mobility. Unfortunately, CPU tower heat sinks are only limited to 166 millimeters in height, but we have full dust filtration at the front and at the bottom. So those really fine dust filters that are really good for performance, blowing through them, you can actually feel air moving on the other side. Although the full bottom dust filter is removable from the back only, really uncomfortable. There's a fan hub included with PWM support and the 5-volt addressable RGB header for 5 devices, which is awesome. The fan hub is important because the case is equipped with 4 RGB fans, so 3 140s at the front and 120 at the back, which are 30mm fan thickness fans, so that's actually also a first of its kind to see included in an enclosure. So thicker fans usually means better performance, right? Although to be fair, the frame is 30mm, but the blades are not. As for radiator support, you can do a 360 at the top, removing the front section of the power supply shroud and including the cable bracket, you have access to that side ventilation, which will support up to a 360, and you can also do anything at the front up to a 360 as well, as long as that front shroud is removed. Now, a few things about this whole front and side ventilation area. First of all, the side one, as you can see, is fine for 120mm fans, and I have that stock 120mm fans that I got from the rear. It's a little tricky to actually mount with the cable sticking out, especially with a 24-pin cable. Like, you really have to compress it in order to get this stuff settled in there. And this might be a little tricky with the motherboards that have this type of 24-pin connector that is facing the side. Otherwise, the cable has no issues mounting, you know, in this standard area. And for the front, this one's a little tricky because I said you can do 360s in the front, but you can't just because the mounting holes are not open like on the side. So here they're like part of the frame, and so you can only use the screws that you could do for a radiator, and they screw into the frame itself, and they're not open, so you cannot mount anything on this side actually, unless you drill them out and make them large like this. But at least, you know what, they've thought about cable management, because each fan is routed in these like small channels over here from the front, so you can cleanly route the front fans without interacting with this side intake or exhaust. I love the removable fan bracket at the top that is installed from the outside, which is how it should be. It also has a little bit of mobility back and forth to let you align the tubes how you want. Strangely, you can also install a 120mm fan right behind the CPU socket on the storage bracket, which would probably be set to exhaust, but it's way too close and restrictive, so definitely expect a lot of noise from that fan. The I/O at the top is nicely spaced out, and the USB-C port is full speed Gen 2. Now, if you are interested in the traditional color options, the black and white are also available, and the price ranges from $139 to $159. So yes, you are paying extra premium for the Chroma Flair, but I think it is totally worth it. So the takeaway is that I love more experimentation with exterior colors. I love the interior combination with support for a reverse connector on the motherboard side, because I think as more companies approach that, it would be nice to have that future-proofness built in already. And overall, the C1 seems like a complete package from a mid-tower point of view. It's not too massive and it has that beautiful curvature on the right side, which is why I'm showing it to you there and not the system on the other side, because the case becomes the showcase instead of your system. And I don't know, I like that a lot. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the next video.